to Miss Now Speaks, and today is the second chapter of what we have seen in last week's video, and that we talk about derivatives and methods of derivative, where I actually show you the simplest methods as well as chain rule. So today we're going to continue with two more methods, which is the product rule and the quotient rule, so stay tuned until the end. Okay, so why do we need to use product rule for derivative? Because we see two functions that multiply each other, and that's where the name product comes about. So this product rule here says that you can actually find the derivative of two functions which are multiplying each other in just the wink of an eye, very quickly. Okay, but assuming or presuming that you must have two functions that multiply each other. So what kind of functions can you see that multiply each other that is complicated? Again, the chain rule will come in. Okay, and you're probably gonna see something like that. Alright, so this is where you can actually use the product rule if you refuse to do expansion of algebra. Of course, if you want to use expansion of algebra, you have no problem. But let me show you later why you should use product rule instead. So the product rule says that you have to be fair to both parties that are available in the functions itself. Therefore, if you want to use product rule, you have to make sure both parties got derivated equally. So we're going to look at this as the first party and this as the second party. Alright, so the first one, x squared plus 1, if we differentiate it, we will have 2x, and then what is said in the product rule is that you have to multiply it with the second party. And the next important thing that you need to remember, the next feature is an addition, and then we derivate or differentiate the second party, which is 2x minus 3, that gives you a 2, and multiply it with the first party. Pretty easy, right? Okay, and that's about it. So because they are all single terms with no powers, it's quite easy. We should just expand them up and leave your answer in the simplified form. So in the most simplified form, and this shall be your answer. Okay, now I was saying earlier why we should use product rule. Imagine I actually change the first example to something like this. So you're not going to open up power 4, right? Just like what we mentioned in the first video that I thought about derivative, because it's so complicated to open any powers that are more than 3. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but it's just so complicated. So therefore, we will apply product rule here. And again, we're gonna name this as the first party and this is the second party. So doing differentiation to both party equally. So the second party is a tricky part, but no worries because we have already learned chain rule, right? So differentiating this one here, bring your power down, power minus 1, and do what is inside. And don't forget to multiply with the first one because it's already so long, so many of us would have forgotten to add back the first party. So remember, we have to be fair to both parties. Alright, so the idea is always be fair. I only want to multiply out the single term, so yep, you can leave your answer like that. But always remember the requirements of your teachers, because different teachers have different requirements, so make sure you check with the teachers what are the final answer that they accept. Okay, alright, let's do one more example on the chain rule. So let's say, okay, we have a square root of x, and then we have 3x. Okay, so I'm not going to open this up too because it just seems so complicated, right? Therefore, I'm just going to apply the product rule here. Alright, let's not forget that x square root of x is actually x power half. Okay, so it makes your life easy if you can remember that it's x power half, and therefore I'm going to differentiate this as half x negative half, because I have already done similar example in my first video on derivative. And then multiply it back with the second party. Now I'm going to differentiate the second party. Differentiate the second party will give you negative 15x negative 6. Okay, and then you want to leave this like that. Alright, so we can just leave the answer like that because it's a little too complicated to be expanded, right? Yeah, we know. Okay, now let's talk about the quotient rule. So when do we use the quotient rule? When you see two functions dividing each other. So when you see two functions dividing each other, then you use the quotient rule. Okay, so what is the difference between the quotient rule and the product rule? Similar, but let's use back this example that we have, x squared plus 1 and 2x minus 1. So this function now will look like this. Okay, so what does the quotient rule say in order to do differentiation? Also similar, you guys should break down to the first party and the second party. Do the differentiation for the first party as always and multiply with the second party. And then this time, because it's a quotient rule, so you actually need to minus. Okay, you need to add a subtraction sign there, and then you do the differentiation for the second party and multiply with the first party. But that's not the end, because it is a quotient rule. You have to divide everything with the second party square. Yeah, definitely looks more complicated when we talk about fraction. Okay, and then let's open up everything just like the first example that we see. Okay, and let's not forget the square, where most people will forget. Always keep your answer in the most simplified form. So scared that I run out of place. Yep. Okay, so this is the quotient rule. Okay, we can have one more example. So let's have one more example here. Let's bring in square root of x. Okay, and then 2x minus 7 is 4. Okay, so how do you find the quotient rule again? We differentiate the first party. So differentiating the first party, multiply with the second party. Minus here is your main star. Okay, and then we use the chain rule to differentiate the second party. Don't forget the first party, and then we need to divide with the square of the second party, and in this case the second party already has a power 4, so squaring it will give you 8. So if you've forgotten about this, make sure you look back at the chapter where I talk about index. So this is one of the index rule. Okay, so if it's pretty complicated, you can just leave your answer as it is, or you just want to make it look a bit nicer. No harm, just simplifying it a bit. Okay. Alright, and if you want to go further, you can also just simplify this with the 3, so you have this power 5 at the end. Okay, so that's all for derivative, and in the last two videos, last video and this video, you have learned all the 4 different methods, so make sure you try questions by yourself. If you have any questions, you can always post comments below. Till then, see you again, take care, and bye.